Okay, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. What a tremendous conference so far. I hope many of you have gotten a chance to see some of Iowa Ideas conferences here yesterday and so far today. Great content and a lot of great community and regional leaders joining us. My name is Doug Newman. I'm the Executive Director at the Cedar Rapids Metro Economic Alliance. Very honored to be moderating this esteemed panel today. We'll hear more from them in just a second. I want to start by thanking a number of these tracks have sponsors that have helped make this possible. And the DEI track and our workforce conversation today is fortunate enough to be sponsored. And we're going to roll a quick video here from the sponsor.
Hi friends, Angelica Vanetta, co-chair of Inclusive ICR. We are a coalition of over 220 employers in Eastern Iowa, all working together to grow the diversity and inclusion of our workforce, to create a space where employees feel a sense of belonging, included, and valued. Inclusive ICR is a proud sponsor of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion track of the Iowa Ideas Conference. As you participate today, be sure to connect with other Inclusive ICR champions, as we'd love to share information with you about our upcoming coalition meetings, projects, and how our work is impacting positive social change in our region. Be sure to check out our website at inclusivicr.org for upcoming events and our e-newsletter. Thank you and have a great conference.
Thank you to Inclusive ICR and Angelica. Thanks for your leadership there, and actually many of the people on the panel involved in Inclusive ICR and certainly in those regional efforts. Because we do have a lot of panelists for one of these panels, and we only have this short hour. I'm actually not going to do even the short biographies, but as you answer your first question, as we talked about, I'd encourage the panelists to just talk very briefly about who they are and their role in this space, and hopefully in that way we're going to leave a little bit more time for those questions. So, Angelica, I'm going to actually come straight to you. So hopefully we'll hear you here. But we're going to, in this session about building the foundation for employer strategies, really focused on what employers can do to try to drive DEI strategies, make progress, make improvements. One of the things we want to talk about is the Community Index Project. And can you start just talking about why Inclusive ICR decided to take on the Community Index Project and how it all came together?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Doug. I'm actually really grateful you didn't ask me to recite what that video was because I couldn't remember what all we said. But basically, it was just about getting people involved in Inclusive ICR. And I do currently serve as the co-chair this year alongside Stephanie Munsterman, who will be sharing shortly as well. My day job then, or professionally, I work as a senior manager of community outreach and engagement at United Way of East Central Iowa. And I have been involved in Inclusive ICR for several years. And this index has actually been something that has been a strategy or a key focus area for a number of years. And it wasn't until after the murder of George Floyd in 2020, when we saw a really big increase, I think, in the interest in our DEI efforts. And so it had always been a strategy that we had outlined, but after talking with a couple of community partners, such as the Economic Alliance, the Iowa Business Partnership, and the Iowa City Area Development Group, the funding became available for us to be able to offer this to the business community. And it was something that the business community had come to us and said, we really need a tool that is accessible to help us identify some opportunities for growth. How can we prioritize our efforts? How can we make sense of all of the possibilities that are out there? So really it was this tool then that we could give to companies to help them sort of outline what some of their key strategies can be going forward. And then just real quick, regionally, it helps us begin to color how our collective efforts have made an impact on the Iowa City, Cedar Rapids area.
I just talked about this morning in a different context, but we're also very proud that by being able to offer it free because of the funding sources for it, some small and mid-sized businesses that maybe wouldn't have been able to access such a tool were able to take it, and we were certainly proud to be a part of that. We're covering so much ground today that we're not going to talk a lot about the actual results of the index. But Angelica, if somebody does want to do a deeper dive and see the report and see all of those results, where can they find that?
Yep, it's on the Inclusive ICR website, which is inclusivicr.org. And there is an accordion column on the left-hand side that they can look at the aggregated regional report and then certainly compare that to their individual business reports, but then a lot of just different resources for those businesses to help them try to figure out what their best strategies are coming up.
Yeah, thank you. Stephanie, I'm coming to you next. As the other co-chair of Inclusive ICR, can you talk about what comes next in terms of the community index? What could or should the region do with the community results? And what is your hope for what companies might do with individual results? And just a reminder to give a quick introduction of yourself as well. You wear a couple of different hats in our region's leadership.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Doug, and thank you to everybody who is here. Yes, I'm Stephanie Munsterman. My pronouns are she, her. I serve as the co-chair with Angelica for Inclusive ICR. During my professional day, I am the executive director of the Cedar Rapids Civil Rights Commission. I've also been involved with Inclusive ICR for multiple years, as has many people in this group. So, next steps, we're anticipating being able to provide this DEI index annually so organizations can compare their results year over year. We do also continue to provide education and resources during quarterly meetings. What should organizations do with their results? Well, each year the Iowa Business Council releases Iowa Competitive Dashboard. For just a little bit, real quick background. And this dashboard measures Iowa's progress in several categories, comparing us to other states, and helps us determine policies that might elevate our economy in Iowa. So according to this dashboard from the Iowa Business Council, Iowa's population growth continues to go down, and we continue to rank as 45th in the nation for diversity. So we are all very well aware of the continued concerns about our workforce. And unfortunately, statistics and evidence shows that this is going to remain a reality for several more years. So to answer the question, as a region, we must remain committed to the DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion efforts to remain competitive as a region and to remain competitive and successful as organizations. So individual organizations, they can intentionally and consistently focus on the areas of attention and use that as opportunities to grow. Inclusive ICR wanted to be sure to provide a wide variety of resources for organizations. So we developed a resource library under the leadership of Angelica and a great group of people. It has a list of tools and resources that specialize in the 5 pillars that come under the assessment. And the hope is all organizations within our region use these tools. And then the hope on top of that is that we see DEI remain an imperative and we see continued growth in our region in this arena.
I'm going to get on to the rest of the panel. Again, a lot of panelists today. With quite a few more people joining, we would encourage you to send in questions. I don't know if we're going to get to them or not. With a big panel, we're going to certainly try to cover a lot of ground, but I absolutely would welcome your questions in the chat as well. Robin, I'm coming to you next as our larger company CEO on the panel today. you had an opportunity to decide whether Civco would be involved in the index, would participate, and then of course what you would do with the information when the results were released. Tell us how Civco used the index results and what you're all currently doing in the DEI space.
Okay. So Robin Thurm, I'm the president of Civco Medical Solutions, and I've been with the company for 31 years, the president for the last 5. And we're actually part of a public company, Roper Technologies. And so, as you can imagine, there's a lot of scrutiny on the public companies to, understand what you're doing in this space. Irregardless of that, that's my day job. My side job is I'm the chair of ICAD, and which also means I'm a board member on the ICR, not the inclusive ICR, but just ICR. And so we've talked a lot about this through the last few years and what's happening around us, and what we can do to make a difference. And I do feel it's important that the companies engage in those activities as well, because this is it's important to me, it's important to our employees, it's important to our society. And so if we're going to make a change, we need to be involved in initiatives like this to help make a difference. So what we've done is we did the survey, and I think honestly, just sitting around the table with my team and answering the questions and talking about it, to really, just like you do with your strategic planning or, any other types of initiatives that you're doing, having the conversation, and being brutally honest with yourself, what are you doing? And the questions really challenge you to think about that and have some introspective to, in reality, what are you really doing to try to make a difference? So I'm a big believer in that you can't just react to the flavor of the month. And this was a hot button for a while. Maybe for some it's died down, but for us, it's just we've done it in a way to make it part of our strategy, instead of, okay, this is one more thing we have to do to check the box to make sure we're having a conversation about DEI, but making it real to our organization. And we've established a small committee of volunteers, and one of those volunteers actually agreed to also be on the inclusive ICR panel as well, to just be to help feed us with many resources, which have been outstanding, by the way, for our organization, what locally we have available to us to utilize at a very reasonable cost as well, but to help focus on different topics within our organization and bring speakers in. So we've termed it inclusivity, with a play on the CIV. And that's our series that we're doing over the next year. We've already had our first speaker that came in and did a conversation on compassion with our groups. It was very well attended. It's all voluntary. We're not mandating that people participate in these. So we had a very meaningful discussion there. And our next one up in November, we're bringing in Humanize My Hoodie. Andre Wright's going to come in and lead a discussion there as well. So we're real excited about it. And our team has really embraced it.
Robin, I want to ask this follow-up, although you've already touched on a lot of this, and you might just, if you don't have anything more to add, that's fine. But I think it's important for us to think about, from a company leadership standpoint, how you sustain attention to DEI issues, and what an employer can be doing. These things can really become, as you just described, check the box, right? A lot of community attention, a lot of earned media around this community index. Great, we did the community index, and good for us. Pat ourselves on the back, and then nothing beyond that. What do you think about as a leader? How is Civco going to sustain attention to this very important issue versus just doing this sort of one-time thing?
Mm-hmm. I think the big thing to me, and this is like with anything that we're doing, is how do you make it manageable? How do you, do it in a way that's just not this massive undertaking, if you will. So like, okay, you got to drop everything and do just this. But how do you break it down into bite sizes that you can swallow, as well as who you get involved in it? I mean, I had one of my exec team members is passionate about this topic, and she kind of took the lead and ran with it, but seeking others to that also have an interest in this and some passion around it to lead the charge. And when that just carries over to the organization when they see the excitement and energy around any given topic, then the organization gets that as well. So yeah, to me, it was really trying to approach it in a way of doing something that's going to stick and not just be, a one-time thing, a one-time, bias training or, whatever. It's
right.
How do we continue to bring these topics to, I'm a big roadmap person. I want multi-year roadmaps for all of these things that we're doing, because I know we can't do it all at once. And we did the same thing here, and we laid out a schedule and we started teeing up topics and use the index in that way too, of what it was telling us where we needed to focus. And that's how we approached it.
Yeah, very good. Tim Carty, I want to come to you next. You wear a couple of different hats here as well. We could talk about your company's activities in the workforce space. I'm going to start out having you be our small company representative, right? We just heard about how Robin executed, used the community index from a large company standpoint. You lead a much smaller company. Tell us about your experience using the survey, and maybe we can discern how that differed from the experience that Robin had at Civco.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me. Also, so yeah, Tim Carty, CEO, or not CEO, geez, that'd be nice. Co-founder and Chief Strategy Officer at Roll Call. And so we're a relatively new company, just a couple of years old. And we're a much smaller team. Like you said, Doug, we, at the time we took the index, we were a team of 3, we're a team of 5 now. But for us, we're obviously a much smaller ship to steer than Civco is. So it's easy for us to say, and frankly, it was just kind of like, hey, there's this index now available. Let's just do kind of like a checkpoint on where we stand against sort of like the diversity, equity, inclusion standards, because both my co-founder Winona and I, it's something that DEI is something that we value, right up there with every single other piece of our company. And we've always been sort of proud of the way we view our work, the way we just kind of view the world, right? And so we took it as almost just, like I said, like a check-in to just sort of make sure that we were living up to our end of the bargain. And it was a really kind of a stark reminder. We didn't do nearly as well as we kind of hoped in the 5 areas of focus and index. We got in 3 of those areas. We got the score of that we had an area of opportunity for us to improve. And it was a great reminder for us that just valuing and caring about a diverse and equitable and inclusive workspace, it wasn't really enough. So we really had to commit to making some intentional changes and really paying attention, even just as a small team, to make sure that those are things that we were implementing in our day-to-day work, both internally and externally.
Tim, I want to follow up and just remind the audience, if people maybe who hadn't been involved in the index think about doing that next year. The individual company results are very confidential. Even those of us sort of behind the curtain don't know the individual results. The results all get aggregated, and we can all look at the community results, but that's it's around 100 companies that are involved in that, and hopefully more going forward. Tim, roll call decided to, and you just, again, here, you were very transparent, very public about how you did, right? Oh, we had 3 areas of opportunity where we needed to grow. I understand you even posted that on social media and sort of talked about that in a very public way. You had no obligation to do that. Why did you think that was important? Why did you decide to be that transparent and public about where you are as a company?
Yeah, I mean, I think for a few reasons. One, to just really to promote the index. We're proud to work in a region that values this work so much that with the leadership of Stephanie and Angelica and ICR in general, to really sort of ask our companies to value diversity, equity, and inclusion work. But for us, it was about accountability a little bit. We're both Winona and I are kind of like middle class white business owners, right? So for us, it was important to say like, hey, we value this. We also want people to hold us accountable to making sure that we're not just talking the talk, but we actually want to walk the walk. So we published not just our scores on the index, but also the steps that we were planning on taking to work on creating a more equitable workplace and region. So just a few things, I mean, relatively easy things that were pretty quick to be able to implement were we had already made sure that we're recognizing Juneteenth as a company holiday. So that's a day that we all take off. But we also, everyone on staff, now there's 5 of us, like I said, everybody chose a book. We purchased a book for each employee that was written by a Black voice. So we thought that was really important. So we also made a list that we would be more than happy to share out of diverse suppliers. So that was another area of opportunity for us. So minority owned, women owned, LGBTQ plus owned, and really sort of any marginalized or underutilized business owner group. We made a list. And so we've made a commitment to at least try to support those businesses in any time a need comes up. So things like that. Yeah. And we really wanted to know, or really wanted everybody to hold us accountable and say, hey, if they're doing it, maybe we can do it too.
Awesome. Thank you. We're doing great on time so far. Panelists, thanks for your answers. You're right on the mark. I would encourage our audience to send in questions if they so choose. We might be able to get to a couple of those at the end. If not, I'll have to brush off those old Gazette journalist skills, and I'm sure I can fill the time if necessary. Jennifer, I want to come to you next. You're in this space of opportunity to talk to many businesses, right, as a membership organization. And I'm curious what you hear from members of the business partnership. I imagine many companies want to have DEI progress of some type or a DEI initiative in their company plans for next year. Are there companies that struggle with exactly what that should be or with how to get started on their DEI journey? And if you do hear that, how are you at the partnership able to help them?
Yes, well, thank you. I am Jennifer Banta, and I work at the Business Partnership. I do community development and advocacy, public policy advocacy. So when I am out talking with members, I think that there's been a real sea change here recently. And Angelica mentioned, George Floyd. I think that folks have just finally reached a breaking point, and that includes business owners and business leaders, right? So we've spent a lot of time talking to business leaders about kind of authentic change. We've heard it before about we can't just continue to check boxes. We really need to drive change on a much broader scale. So I hear from our nonprofit members here in Johnson County. We have about a third of our members are nonprofits. So how do I diversify my board? How do I diversify my supplier list? How do I, do those types of things? Tim, great example. very small companies where I'm sure Tim is wearing all kinds of different hats, right, within an organization. So with someone like him that is, very time limited on how many resources, including time, that he can, put towards an effort, we felt it was incredibly important to have a very robust set of resources available to folks after they took this survey, or even if they didn't take the index, it's available to everyone out on the Inclusive ICR website. That includes a full range of different ideas and resources that are available from, if you do have the money and resources to hire a consultant, we have a list of consultants. If you're a leader within the organization, we have a lot of resources for leaders. If you want to get involved at a level of joining the Inclusive ICR Coalition, you have those options. So I encourage everybody to go out there and take a look. But for us as an organization, as a Chamber of Commerce business partnership, we were really interested in the survey results in what do we need to be working on as a membership organization to provide our members after this index. And a few things came to light for us. Diverse supplier lists seem to be something that every organization sort of unanimously was thinking about, or kind of maybe hadn't thought about it previously, but was now after the index thinking about it. So what could we do? So one of the things that we're working on, when you go to a Chamber of Commerce website, you often see a directory of our members. We've never asked our members if they would like to be listed as a Black business owner, as a veteran, as a woman-owned business. So that's something that we're doing now. And hopefully in the next few months, you'll start seeing that show up in our directory, so that when you go to our directory, you can search for diverse suppliers and see who can you be patronizing in Johnson County that kind of meets that requirement. The other thing we've been working on too is we launched a few months ago a new newsletter directed at HR managers called Talent Tuesday. And in the last episode of Talent Tuesday, we talked about how do you access UI Reach and Voc Rehab to really start thinking about diverse employees that maybe have a disability, and how do you make your workplace a little bit more friendly or accessible to folks with disabilities. So we're choosing some topics that maybe we wouldn't have thought about before, but after looking at those survey results, we're able to provide some content and help specifically HR managers think about some of these things as they go into thinking about hiring diversity. So I hope that answered your question, Doug.
Awesome. Thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate that. Erin, I'm coming to you next. Thanks for your patience. 30 minutes. They're just smiling. You're going to get a chance to talk now. If you look back, and I'm scanning our audience here too, I see former ICAD and former P1 board chair Chuck Peters among the audience. He'll appreciate this question as well. But economic development groups traditionally did not play in the DEI space at all. ICAD, Priority One, which was the former organization in Cedar Rapids, the early days of the Economic Alliance. When you think about economic development, those organizations were set up to drive the traditional stuff. We're going to add jobs. We're going to seek major capital investments. We're going to expand existing companies. We're going to bring in new companies and really try to stay very narrowly focused, right? Nothing else. But that has changed a lot in recent years. Can you talk, Erin, about how both workforce and DEI are now a much more significant part of the focus of an economic development organization?
Sure. Well, and if you want, in my opinion, I think that we've taken far too long to get into the DEI scope and make that part of our work. And our economic development orgs, it'll always remain important for us to create wealth in our communities with adding those jobs, seeking investments, existing expanding existing business and bringing in new companies, but how we approach these things is what evolves. And I think that the needs of our individual communities is how that derives this. And we're no longer chasing smokestacks and silos. And it's shown us that community development is actually an imperative part of economic development. Building a better, more diverse, inclusive, and equitable community where people want to live, work, and play is very important. We've seen in successful communities around the country that have DEI strategies, their populations are increasing, their existing businesses are thriving, and new companies are being created and moving into those communities, just making those economies stronger, more resilient, innovative. And for our workforce, for our employers, understanding and knowing the importance of how they rate and being transparent with their internal DEI initiatives directly affects their employee retention and their ability to attract a talented workforce. These initiatives are so important to job seekers who are often willing to relocate to an area where an employer is shares their values and is promoting community development, so that they know that their quality of life is going to be a good thing. And this is why, as a business support org, it's just so important for us to make sure that we're making our companies realize and recognize that the DEI assessment and keeping that free for them, so that they could take that and see where they might have areas of strength and areas or opportunities for improvement, and just really trying to grow that, because it's only going to help our community as a whole. And I think that with Civco and Roll Call that we've seen here today, there are excellent examples of how being intentional with their DEI initiatives really create successful business environments and a true sense of community.
Yeah. Thanks, Erin. I'm going to follow with you as well. This question almost gets us over into the what is regionalism, but that's a topic for another day, right? But it is interesting here, and I think maybe a little bit of education for our audience as well. This project, this community index, and really inclusive ICR is one of the things that ICAD and the Economic Alliance have partnered together on. And I guess I'm assuming in this question that we're proud of this and that we think it's working well, but not everything can be done regionally. Not everything works as a partnership. We do some things together and some things we don't do together very intentionally. Why did this work well as a partnership? Why was this good space for the two of us to be in together?
Well, I think that ICR Iowa as a whole, with all of our initiatives, with workforce, business attraction, education, and then with inclusive ICR, these are things that affect our entire region and our entire state, our entire country. This isn't something, I mean, it's individualized when you get into your communities on different things that are taken, resources that are available, but really it is, this is just something that is a broad stroke. It is, collaboration is the new competition, as I like to say, and just working together with our partners, knowing that we can make a difference. And we have, I mean, so much of our workforce travels from Iowa City to Cedar Rapids and vice versa, Cedar Rapids to Iowa City daily. So just making sure that we're consistent with our messaging and having resources and tools available to build a stronger economy and community.
Yeah, great. Angelica and Stephanie, I'm going to come to you with a couple of questions here. And we also have a question from the audience that I think is going to be best suited for you guys. So you're on the hot seat for a couple of minutes here, okay? I'm going to ask a similar question that I just asked to Erin, but from your perspective, right? So Erin and I have our own perspectives about why our organizations did this in collaboration and why we care. From your perspective, inclusive ICR, why does it work well? Maybe that's a little bit of a leading question, but it's a regional collaboration. Should it be? Does it work well as a regional collaboration? What's your perspective as two people leading the organization about the fact that it is a regional initiative?
Sure, I'll start. And I would echo everything that Erin said, that it is something that does impact us regionally. Locally, your responses may be a little bit different, but it is a regional effort and should continue to be. I also think that we need to make sure that we're taking a look at this from a statewide perspective, right? All of that impacts the recruitment of workforce to our state and the retention on whether or not they stay here. But I think if we're talking specifically on this initiative and inclusive ICR and the DEI index, the group is completely volunteer led, from professionals who work in a lot of different spaces and wear a lot of different hats. So we're talking from Cedar Rapids and Iowa City, and Lynn County, Johnson County, and so on. But the one thing that holds true for all of us is that we do truly understand and appreciate both the business case and the moral case for diversity, equity, and inclusion work in the workforce. So I think that's also why it works. With this particular initiative, we also brought in additional DEI practitioners and champions outside of just the Inclusive ICR Advisory Council. So there's the Advisory Council, individuals who are members and who join us for our quarterly meetings, and our, other people, experts that share information. But we really wanted to make sure that we branched out so that we understood what those needs were and the perspectives of a larger audience. Should it be a regional effort? Absolutely. And I think it will take all of us to continue to make sure that it remains a priority, because for so long, it's been something that we've started and stopped and started and stopped. And I think we're finally at a point where we just need to keep barreling through.
Stephanie, I'll come to you with the second half of this question. The topic of this session today is building the foundation for employer strategies. We've talked an awful lot about the community index. That was the big initiative for this year, and we're certainly proud of that. But it's about more than that, right? Inclusive ICR is about more than that, and certainly employer strategies that continue to drive progress in this area is about more than just the community index. Stephanie, I want you to take a few minutes for the audience, talk about other initiatives that Inclusive ICR has going on, other resources, companies that might be exploring ways to try to take the next step, or in some cases a first step. What else besides the community index can we point to?
Sure. For some background, as you know, there is ample evidence showing that inclusive workplaces, they see greater innovation, greater financial returns, they outperform competitors, improve employee experiences, the whole gamut of that business case for the importance of DEI. We know that these contributions come from a work environment that is diverse, that is equitable, and is inclusive, and one in which all of the employees feel that they belong. Those contributions are at the core of the future of our economic success here in the region and as a state. So individual organizations and as a region can intentionally and consistently focus on areas within their own organization in need of attention. Again, keywords, intentionality and consistency. So Inclusive ICR continues to be committed to being a resource for tools and guides around DEI work, diversity, equity, inclusion work. Organizations are always invited to participate and attend our quarterly meetings, which you can find on Inclusive ICR website. And one other really fun thing that we just launched relatively recently is a community calendar. And this community calendar lists events going on in our community that might be of interest to your employees, to your colleagues that are around different DEI events. So it's important that we have DEI remain in the zeitgeist, I guess, of our community. As Angelica said, it kind of ticked up after the murder of George Floyd. I've been in civil rights work, well, golly, about 15 years now. And this is definitely the highest interest that I have seen in this work, because people are getting it. And now that we understand that the increase in DEI does impact your currency, your bottom line, your retention, we need to make sure that we're continuing to share that powerful message to everyone, that DEI is a priority, and we need to continue to provide education. And so that's another aspect of our inclusive ICR meetings, is there's always an educational portion around, this last year was around the different pillars of the assessment. But we also, going forward, will continue that, as well as continuing to get information out to smaller businesses, to nonprofits. We want to connect with youth. We want to connect with college students. So we have that pipeline, so people remain interested in this work and remain understanding of the importance that is fundamental to our state.
Stephanie, thanks. The question that came from the audience, one of you can maybe address this and do it briefly. We've talked a lot about the index, but the questioner did want to know more about the history of the index. Maybe if we could talk just for a minute about, we did find some other communities that had done this, one community in particular, and maybe just talk very briefly about Mosaic and kind of how that came about. And then I would encourage the person who asked the question to reach out. We can give you a bunch of the history, but at least a couple of top line things here for today.
Yeah, I'll answer that briefly, and then I may just volley it over to Erin, because I know Erin had worked quite closely with Mosaic. But Mosaic is an organization very similar to Inclusive ICR, based in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and they worked with Reliance, I believe is the name of the consultant, to develop these index questions. And so we took a look at those questions and wanted to make sure that they were relevant to our community, to our region, and made some potential updates for that. And then from that portion, we really did dive in on localized resources for the resource guide, but the creation of the questions and the index itself was in partnership with a couple of other organizations. And then Erin, I don't know if you have any additional information you'd like to add.
No, I think that you covered it. Seeing the success out of the Mosaic index that they had put together was actually just a cost savings to us on kind of using that and modifying it so that we didn't have to pay for the full creation. So just being very cognizant of the dollars that we're spending as well between our orgs, but it was a really great thing. There are a couple of organizations that we could potentially look at in the future that are local, that actually are working to build a similar sort of assessment. So we're looking forward to seeing that happen.
I do remember that it felt like a very daunting project until we saw Tulsa and we landed on that, and it's like, we're going to be able to do this, right? I remember feeling very relieved when we found that. So yeah, it definitely was modeled, and we'll see where that goes in the future. Hey, I want to ask this question of Robin, but on this question, I want to open this up to anybody as well, to add anything else they want into this. How important is the role of the top leader, the CEO, the president, the executive director, the top leader of a company or an organization in setting the tone for DEI initiatives? Robin, can I start with you on that?
Sure. I think it's going to be very important. It's like other initiatives in your organization. If they don't feel like you're convicted and really believe in it, they realize you're not going to fund it, and so you're not going to get a lot of energy and activity around trying to get it accomplished. And also, quite honestly, as a company that sells in over 100 countries and 40% of our business is exports, I need for our team to understand, and appreciate dealing with the different cultures, outside of the US. And that, of course, parlays into dealing with the US, because we have so many cultures represented here. And I think that's really helped our team understand the differences and appreciate the differences across the globe and we're able to expose them to a lot of different experiences in that way. I think Stephanie and Erin said it best, but I understand that that's how a company succeeds, and it is a big part of your growth is to be able to be diverse in so many different ways. And it's so I definitely have to lead the charge. I mean, they need to understand that that it's important to you as a leader.
And maybe that's a no duh answer to a lot of people. Like, of course, the leadership position is really important, but there's a lot, especially in a larger company like Civco, there's a lot of initiatives where mid-level managers are empowered to carry out the initiative, right? It's not, the CEO does not touch everything in an organization. And I see Other Taylor is among the people that joined us. Other helped facilitate some CEO roundtables that I participated in over the past year. We had about 19 companies that came together on that and really drove that notion home. Like, you are not going to make success on this particular issue if there's not a strong conviction from the top. So I'm not a panelist, I'm the moderator. I probably shouldn't have gone there, but does anybody else want to chime in on that question before we move along?
I would like to quickly, just, emphasizing what she was saying, because leaders have the power to work to ensure that those DEI initiatives are integrated within the complete suite of systems and processes, and helps to ensure that the resources are allocated. And to your point, Doug, the highest performing companies have institutionalized DEI. It's not just the leaders. And they explicitly state their commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and integrated DEI into those key organizational processes like recruitment and selection, advancement, training, succession planning, the whole host of people management and systems. So it's important that it's embedded in all of the different processes. But having that person at the top showing, yes, this is important, it's vital. Otherwise, it just seems as like, oh, this is something that I think she said earlier was like just a flavor of the month. This is not. This is fundamental to our success. One, as a human race, but two, economically in our community.
Anybody else want to touch on a thought about leadership? Okay, I'm going to move along. Tim, I want to come to you with this question again with the smaller company perspective here, and we've definitely touched on this a little bit already, but I want to ask this directly and maybe re-explore a couple of things that were already said. It has to be tempting as a very small company to not invest time in what, at least to some people, might feel like a discretionary activity when you have so much else to do, right? You mentioned a couple of job titles. In reality, you have like 14 job titles in a 5-person company, right? Mm-hmm. And yet, so boy, I would think it's awfully easy for a small company to have the very legitimate, very rational, maybe not legitimate, but let's call it rational perspective that we wish we could, but we just don't have time. Tell us how you make time as a small company for an initiative.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it wasn't discretionary. It was something that, for a few reasons. One, again, because it's something that we value as a pillar of our company. And I think this has been touched on as well. There are a couple of reasons why I think it's been vital for us. As we grow as a company, we want to make sure that we're a welcoming environment for all types of people. Anybody who may be interested in working for us, we want those candidates from any background, any race, any gender, anything, to know that this is a place where they're welcomed, that they're wanted, that we value what they bring to the table, not just as an employee, but also as a human. So, making sure that as we plan on our growth, that we're planning to grow in a welcoming, inclusive way is paramount, and definitely not discretionary. The second one is that in the line of work that we're in, we're working with cities and states all over the country. And for us to recommend, which we always do, intertwining or building strategies around diversity, equity, inclusion work, not as like a piece of like a small piece of your work, a piece of all the work you're doing. For us to be able to make those recommendations to other places, we had to make sure that we were sort of taking care of our own house, and holding ourselves to a higher standard than we ever would one of our clients. And I think that we've been successful in that. So yeah, for us, not discretionary, absolutely vital for the health of our company, and I think for the future success of it as well.